Yeah, let's do it.
Right. Dalad base. What is it? No, we did this. Dalad Gimel, right? Dalad Gimel. Rabbi Yehuda says there is merely a fence of the vineyard. And what is the machmal of the vineyard? Between two vineyards. What is a fence? That which is 10 tefachim high, and a ditch that is 10 deep and 4 wide. A partition of reeds, if there is less than 3 handbreadths between one reed and another through which a kid can enter, it is regarded as a partition. And a breach in a fence is up to 10 cubits and is regarded as an entrance. If it exceeds this, it is forbidden opposite the breach. And if there are many breaches, if that which stands exceeds the breach, it is permitted. But if the breach extends that which stands, it is forbidden opposite the breach. If one plants a row of 5 vines, Beit Shammai says it is a vineyard, but Beit Hillel says it is not a vineyard unless there are 2 rows. Therefore, if one sows within 4 cubits of a vineyard, Beit Shammai says he rendered forbidden 1 row, and Beit Hillel says he rendered forbidden 2 rows.
Okay, so now we already learned that the halacha is going to be like Beis Hillel, so we're going to forget Beis Shammai for the time being. Okay, so in the coming Mishnayos, all we're looking at is the opinion of Beis Hillel that says that that you need 2 rows, but it's not just 2 rows in any layout. It's 2 rows in a very specific format, as we'll see over here. So hanotea shtayim keneged shtayim v'achas yotz'a zanav harei zeh kerem. So you've got to have one that sticks out like a tail. So you can see you've also got Kahati over there. The first
Mhm.
diagram that's got three underneath it, two.
Two.
So the one sticks out like a tail. Okay,
Right.
that is what Beis Hillel says is your minimum share of kerem. Okay. What it's not is shtaim keneged shtaim v'achas b'intayim. If you've got two against two and one in the middle, or shtaim keneged shtaim v'achas be'emtza, or to two against two and one in the middle. So you can see those two different configurations. One with a sort of one planted
Right.
in the half space, and on the other one where you got where you've got a sort of a chet shape.
Right.
Um, so those in those cases, the Beis Hillel would say that's not called a vineyard. That's so what's the difference? It means that instead of 4 amas, you only need to give it 6 tvachim. Okay. Okay, actually, you shtaim keneged shtaim v'achas yotza zanav. So you'll find now. Why does the Mishnah have to repeat what is already said? Um, that's an interesting discussion which the commentators dive into, and so it's coming to bring some other case that it's excluding, but we're not going to dive into that right now. Okay. Mishnah Zayin Hanotea Shura Achas Besoch Shelo. So a guy plants 1 row in his own property next to the fence. Okay. Beshura Achas Besoch Shel Chavero. And his friend next door has also got a row of grapevines on his side of the fence. Okay. V'derech hayachid, v'derech harabim be'emtza. And what have you got? Well, let's say I said the wrong thing. I don't want to say on his side of the fence. His side of his property, but it's close to each other. And in other words, and they're within 8 amas of each other. That's the important part over here, because if you have more than 8 amas, the 2 rows don't join together.
It
If
says here, though, one plants 1 row on his and 1 row in his neighbor's.
and his neighbor, in other words, his neighbor had already planted. Well, there is 1 row already in his neighbor's
Ah,
property.
okay.
Okay. So now, by themselves in their own property, this would not be called a vineyard. It would just be called single vines, and you would only need to give it 6 tvachim. Okay. But you've got the neighbor over there. So even if you've got um, a path or a derech harabim, even with I don't know how you have a derech harabim and that's another source of discussion, like a derech harabim that's less than 8 amas wide. Um, Gader shehu namuch me'asar tefachim, or any kind, even a little low fence, a low wall that's just
Right.
demarcating the property, but that doesn't really prevent you from crossing. Okay, so it's less than 10 tefachim, so it's not really a mechitza. Harei elu mitzvahs. So the vineyard is not defined by who the owner is; it's defined by where the grapes are.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's defined by where the grapes are, and if there is no halachic separation between these vines, then they join together for a vineyard, and you have to give them 4 amas on either side. Gavoa me'asar tvachim. If, however, the fence is higher than 10 tvachim, einan mitzvahs, then that separates between the vines, and you don't have a vineyard.
Mhm.
Rabbi Yehuda Omer im eresan milamala hare elo mitzarfos. If, however, he made them join together over the top, where so that the vines intermingle over the fence, and then those join together. Kahati doesn't paskin one way or another on Rabbi Yehuda over here. It seems kind of a logical statement, actually. Um, so I would suspect that we may be choshesh for Rabbi Yehuda's opinion over there. Okay, Mishnaches Hanotea Shtei Shuros. So, okay, we have planted 2 rows of vines. Im ein beinehem shmone amos lo yavi zera lasham. So, if you don't have 8 amos in between them, then you cannot plant anything else in between because now you've got a vineyard. The 8 amos is the minimum, is the maximum shear to join together 2 rows to form a vineyard according to Beis Hillel. Hayu shalosh. What happens if you have 3 rows? Im ein ben shur lechaverta sheish esrei amma. Now, if you've got 3 rows, then you need 16. Then you need 16 amas in between them.
Mhm.
Okay, because this is now called if you've got a gap in between. Now what you need is machol hakerem, and we said what we saw previously when we were talking about a machol of the kerem that Beis Hillel said that you need 16 amas in the middle if you want to plant anything in between. Okay. לא יביא זרע לשם. רבי אליעזר בן יעקב אומר משום חנניה ben חכינאי, אפילו חרבה האמצעיס, if the middle row was entirely destroyed, ואין בין שורה לחברתה 16 אמה, לא יביא זרע לשם. Then still you cannot bring if the gap is less than 16 amas between the 2 outer rows. You still cannot bring seeds into if it had been planted like that in the beginning, then you'd have a machol karim, right? And he would agree with that. Then it would be permitted even with 8 amos. Okay, and he says that since it was initially planted as a vineyard, we're keeping the rules of the vineyard, even though now we no longer have the semblance of a vineyard. And the halacha does not follow him. Once the middle row is destroyed, it reverts back to its situation of being two independent vines which do not form a kerem.
So if he planted, if the first time he planted it, he left 8 cubits between them, that would have been okay.
You see, if you've got more than 8 amas in between 2 rows of vines, they don't
Right.
join together as far as a vineyard is concerned. That's too far apart to call them a vineyard. Okay, so if you had, for example, let's say you've got 10 rows, okay, and the rows are planted 5 amas apart, let's just say, okay. Now you've got 100% vineyard all the way. Now,
Okay.
what happens if you knock out 1 row in the middle, if or a patch of vines gets a disease in the middle and you have to uproot them. So now you've got this gap over here. What's the distance between the 2 vines is 10 amas. That is still less than 16 amas. You would not be allowed to plant anything else in that space.
Okay.
Okay. Um, However, if the entire row died and he uprooted the entire middle row, so you've got, let's say, 5 rows there and 4 rows there. So that's an independent vineyard over there. That's an independent vineyard over there. You've got a gap of 10 amas in between. Now you have to leave 4 amas on this side and 4 amas on that side, but the 2 amas in the middle, you'd be allowed to plant something else. And that's what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying. No, you would not be allowed to plant anything in there because it was originally a vineyard and you now got less than 16 amas in between, so you wouldn't be allowed to plant there. But Chachamim would say no, it loses its connection to the vineyard altogether because it's been uprooted, and therefore you no longer have you can go by the 8 amas measurement.
Okay. Okay. Right.
Okay.
Fine. If one buries turnips or horseradish under a vine, if some of the leaves are uncovered, he need not be concerned about Kilayim or about the Shvius or about Mysores, and they may be contracted and they may be extracted on Shabbos. If one sows wheat and barley together, that is Kilayim. Rabbi Yehuda says it is not Kilayim unless there are two wheat grains and one barley grain, or one wheat grain and two barley grains, or a wheat grain, a barley grain, and a spelt grain. If a saw contains a quarter of another kind, he must reduce it. Rabbi Yossi says he must eliminate whether it is one kind or of two kinds. Rabbi Shimon says that said it only of one kind, but they can come and say any Kilayim within the saw that combines to make up a quarter. When does this apply? Grain with grain, and pulse with pulse, grain with pulse, and pulse with grain. Rightly, they said, garden seeds which are not used as food combine to make up 1/24th of that which falls into a beitzah. And Rabbi Shimon says, just as they declared to be stringent, so also they declared to be lenient. Flax combines with grain to make up the 1/24th of that which falls into a beitzah.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, if a person collects sheaves to make hats or a kumsat, or a cake or sheaves, he is not liable to shikakah. If it's taken from there to the threshing floor, it is liable to shikakah. If a person collects sheaves for the heap, it is liable to shikakah, and from there to the threshing floor, it is not liable to shikakah. This is the general rule. Whoever collects sheaves to take to a place that marks the conclusion of their work, it is liable to shikakah. From there to the threshing floor, it is not liable to shikakah. To a place that does not mark the conclusion of the work, it is not liable to shikakah. And from there to the threshing floor, it is liable to shikakah. Beit Shammai says the enunciation of ownership in favor of the poor is a valid renunciation of ownership. Beit Hillel says it is not a valid renunciation of ownership unless it is declared ownerless in favor of the rich. Also, as the Shemitah, if all the sheaves of the field are a cob each and one of 4 cobs, and he forgot it, Beit Shammai said it is not a shikakah, and Beit Hillel says it is. The sheaf that is close to a stone fence or to a heap or to cattle or to implements, and he forgot it, Beit Shammai said it is not shikakah, and Beit Hillel says it is shikakah. Okay. And on to Nida. Test. If she was accustomed to experience a menstrual discharge at the beginning of the episodes, all the taharos that she handles for the duration of the episodes are tameh. If at the end of the episodes, all the taharos that she handles for the duration of the episodes are tahor. Rav Yoshi says days and hours also establishes fixed periods. If she was accustomed to experience a discharge at sunrise, she is forbidden for cohabitation only at sunrise. Rav Yehuda says the entire day is permitted for her. If she was accustomed to experience a discharge every 15th day and she changed to discharging on the 20th day, both this day and that day are forbidden. If she changed twice on to the 20th day, both this day and that day are forbidden. If she changed 3 times to the 20th day, the 15th day becomes permitted, and she is enabled for herself the 20th day as a fixed period. For a woman does not establish a fixed period until she establishes it 3 times, and she does not become free from a fixed period until it is uprooted from her 3 times. Women in their virginity are like wine. There is a vine whose wine is red, and there is a vine whose wine is black. There's a vine whose wine is plentiful, and there's a vine whose wine is meager. Rabbi Yehuda says every vine has wine in it, and that which has no wine, it is a darkity. Okay.
Kilayim.
Okay. Baseball Dalid. At what point do leather utensils become susceptible to contracting tumah? A shepherd's pouch from when the craftsman edges it and trims it and he inserts it in drawstrings. Rabbi Yehuda says from then it attaches it to loops. A leather tanner's apron from when he edges it and trims it and attaches its sashes. Rabbi Yehuda says from when he attaches its rings. A leather bedspread from when he edges it and trims it. Rabbi Yehuda says from when he attaches the strings. A pillow and a mattress of leather are susceptible from when he fully stitches them and trims them. And Rabbi Yehuda says from when he sews them and leaves them over in a space smaller than 5 handbreadths. A petala is tame, but a kasana is tahor. Fruit covers made of leaves are tahor, but those made of twigs are tame. A wrap into which one places fruits and from which one removes them is tame, but if you cannot do so without tearing it or untying it, it is tahor. The leather gloves of winnowers, of wayfarers, or flax workers is tame, but the glove of dyers and blacksmiths are tahor. Rabbi Yossi says also the gloves of bean grinders is the same as they. This is the general rule. A glove that is meant to hold things is tame, but that which is used because of perspiration is tahor. Okay. And we are on to Sanhedrin. Okay, Vav Hey. Says Rizmaya, at a time when a person suffers, what expression does the Shekhinah use? So to speak, I am burdened by my head, and I am burdened by my arms. If the omnipresent is paying so for the blood of the wicked which is spilled, how much more for the blood of the righteous? Not only this, but anyone who leaves his deceased relative overnight transgresses a negative commandment. If he left him overnight for the sake of his honor, in order to bring him a casket or shrouds, he does not transgress. They do not bury him in his ancestral plot. Rather, they were two cemeteries, one set aside for the court, one set aside for the beheaded or strangled, and one for those who were stoned or burned. When the flesh has decomposed, they gather the bones and bury them in their place. The relatives come to inquire after the welfare of the judges and the witnesses, as if to say, we have nothing in our hearts against you because you have judged correctly. They do not mourn, but they grieve, for grieving is only in the heart. 4 executions were given to the court: stoning, burning, beheading, and strangulation. Reb Shimon says burning, stoning, and strangulation and beheading, and this is the procedure for those who are stoned.
Okay.
And we are on to Sukkah. Sukkah, I have, unless I made a mistake. Aleph Aleph? No,
No, no, I've got Gimel Zayin.
no, I thought I put it in the wrong place. Okay. Gimel Zion. The minimum size of an estrog. Meir says the size of a nut. Rabbi Yehuda says of an egg, and a maximum size for one to hold 2 in one hand. So says Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says even one in both hands is valid. The lulav is only to be bound with the same species. So says Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi says even with string. Rabbi says it happened that the people of Yushalayim would bind the lulav with threads of gold, and they said to him, they bound it underneath with its own species. And where did they wave? At, oh, give thanks unto the Lord, both at the beginning and at the end of, please, O Lord, save us now. So says Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says, also during, please, O Lord, make us prosper. When Rekava declared, I watched Rabbi Gamil and Rabbi Shua, and when they were waving their lulavs, they only waved their, please, O Lord, save us now. If someone was on a journey and had no lulav in hand to take up, he shall take it at his table when he comes home. If he does not take it up in the morning, he may do so in the afternoon, since the entire day is fit for the lulav. Okay. All right.
We're done.
Thank you. I forgot.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought I'd be late because of Rosh Chodesh, but we started much very earlier. So you're off to Davin, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. All right. Have a good
Chodesh.
day. Chodesh Tov. Chodesh Tov. Be well.